Grand Masters History Project with the most worshipful Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of Washington. My name is Very Worshipful Bud Cook, and I will be the interviewer. And our audio-video operator is Most Worshipful Brother G. Santi Lascano. And we are honored to be here with Most Worshipful Brother Gale H Kenney, our Grand Master in 2009-2010. Most Worshipful, first allow me to thank you for taking your time to participate in this Grand Lodge History Project.
My pleasure.
Question number one, Most Worshipful, what prompted you to become a Mason?
What prompted me to become a Mason is kind of an interesting question because it just kind of happened in a way. When I was a young man, I was working doing warehouse work to get myself through college, and I worked at what was called Washington School Supply. And I had this wonderful foreman, and he's probably in his late 60s at the time. His name was Carl Sandburg, just like the poet. And he told me a story that I never ever forgot. He says that during the Second World War, he and his wife were traveling across the country, and he had gotten a flat tire and pulled into a gas station. And while he was there, he had asked if he could buy some new tires. The gas station owner told him, no, we can't sell any tires or give any tires because we're saving the rubber for the war cause. Well, during the course of this conversation, it came to be that they both found out they were Masons. And the interesting thing about it, he told me that when he left that gas station, he had 4 brand new tires on his car. Now, that didn't mean anything to me at the time, and of course you don't join Masonry expecting to get some reward or something for joining, because that's not what it's about. And so I'd forgotten all about that. I was in between 18 and 22 at the time. And I did not actually become a Mason until I was probably 31, 32 years old. And I was working at Lockheed Shipbuilding and Construction Company down Harbor Island, Seattle. And it turns out that I was in the personnel department. And this was in 1981 when I joined. And I had noticed several of the other people that I worked with, my compatriots and coworkers, had Masonic rings on. And I finally just says, what is this all about? And they says, hey, I'm going to take you to the boss and you guys can chat. And that point in time is when I was given a petition by my boss, whose name was David Stoner. And so that's how I actually became a Mason. You know, that was still like, not 15, it was like about 10 years in between this one story and things, and I just never had really thought about it before. So that's what prompted me to become, because I was just finally curious enough that I says, how does this happen? And I became a member of George Washington Lodge number 251, which is unfortunately now gone away and merged in with University Lodge number 141. So that's how I prompted to become a Mason.
How did you come by the design of your Grand Master's pin?
Well, to be very honest, I have to give credit where credit is due, and Most Worshipful Brother Santi Lascano, who's sitting behind the camera there, is the brother who did the beautiful artwork for it. Santi and I spent about 4 years driving in the car together across the state as I was going up through the line, and he had thrown his name in for the Grand South. And I had come across, and I'm skipping a little here, I had come across watching the public broadcast station one time. And at that time they had something that was like inspire, involve, inform, and something like that. And I says, those are kind of really cool words. I like those, but I'm going to change them around, and I think I can use them for my year as Grand Master. And so I changed them to inform, inspire, and involve. So Santi and I are driving on our way to Spokane, I think, one time, and I think that's where we almost bit the truck, Santi. I'm not sure. But he's going, all of a sudden, Santi has this big epiphany. He says, I got it. We'll take it, and we're going to make a triangle out of it, and we'll put the LC&I in the center with the square and compasses, and we'll go from there. And I says, I love it. Let's do it. And to give credit to Most Worshipful Brother Santi, he has designed John McNabb's pin. He designed, Jimmy Reed didn't really have a pin per se. He used something else. And then he did Sat Tashura's, he did Al Jorgensen's, he did Chuck McQuarrie's and Wayne Smith and Doug Tucker's and mine and his own and Mike Sanders and Dean Heinemann's. I mean, the man is phenomenal with his artwork, and he did a lot of ladies, and he did them also for other Grand Masters in other grand jurisdictions as well. So I'm very fortunate that I have a brother like Santi that did that. So from there, I took it and I expanded on, excuse me, to what it really means. And so, very simply put, to inform people about Masonry, to inspire them to become Masons by our works and our actions and our moral character, and then to get them involved being Masons, to build better men, better character of family and home, and to be involved with our concordant independent body. So it's very simple, but all three of those words tied into each other. And it was fun during the year how different people would write different aspects of it, of being informed, of being involved, of being inspired. And then just the design of the pin, again, it's so symbolic when you start tearing it all down and thinking about it, is that it's in the form of a triangle. So that's one of our numbers, 3. It has the blue canopy of heaven, or the blue background, which symbolizes our blue lodges. And then in the very center of things is the all-seeing eye of the great architect, looking down and inspiring us, because in the center of that eye is the square and compass of Masonry. And so it has a whole lot of Masonic symbolism, if you want to look at it that way. So I was very proud of that pin. And Brother Santi, thank you for designing it for me.
Interesting story. What was the theme for your year as Grand Master?
My 3 I's: inform, inspire, and involve, which I just shared with you. I jumped ahead.
What are some of the major goals that you wanted to pursue during your term?
During my year, there were several things I wanted to do, and several of them came to fruition, and some did not, that I encouraged to be passed on. One of the things that I wanted to do is that I had been the chairman and the co-chairman of the long-range planning. And long-range planning is so very, very important to this grand jurisdiction. And as such, it was coming up that we looked to review it every 5 years or so. Well, it was coming up on his 4th year, and I didn't want to wait a 5th year, so I asked Very Worshipful Brother Jim Mendoza and the Long Range Planning Committee to reassess and relook at our long-range plan to make sure we're going in the right direction, because as a great philosopher Heraclitus once said, you can't step in the same river twice, because all is in flux, all is changing. That river may look like it's the same river, but the pebbles, the sand, and the debris in it is constantly in flux. And that's what we have to be as a Grand Lodge. We must constantly be changing, and change comes slow, because a lot of times we don't want to embrace it. But once we do, then it's a whole new world for us. And that's what I asked Jim to do, is to reevaluate it. And during my year, he did, and we presented an updated long-range plan that was accepted by our membership. The other thing I wanted to do was change our Grand Lodge website. And so I tasked the technology committee to do that. And Worshipful Brother Anthony Monaco took that to task and to heart and worked really hard in changing it and getting it up to date. And it had a lot of resistance in there. And so the Grand Lodge website that we have right now is a product of that. So I was very, very happy that that happened. The other thing I asked to have done was to rewrite our district deputy's handbook, and to also redo our lodge officer's handbook. I got about 99% done with both of those, and I encouraged my predecessors to continue on with that. But those two were 2 projects that were undertaken that unfortunately didn't make to fruition, that I was unfortunate didn't happen. Also, during the year, the membership committee wanted to develop a website. And they were very successful in doing that. And as part of that process, they wanted to have the Grand Master walk on when you opened up the website. And so I sat down with them and did a walk-on, which was kind of a fun thing with the green screen behind you and everything, and trying to read the script as you were going. And it came out very well, actually. And my reward was cookies and milk when we were done with that. So I appreciated that. I think those were some of the things I wanted to do. I also wanted to have more done on publicity, but it didn't happen, unfortunately, the way I really wanted it to. I wanted to see more welcome signs out there when you came into communities, letting people know that we were Masons. I wanted to see more license plates out there, going from 1,700 to 2,000 at that time. I wanted to see more signs on the freeway where we participated in cleaning up an owned section of the freeway or highway or something like that. Some of these things I wanted to see happen too that didn't. I also wanted to see that we had more sister lodges within our jurisdiction. We have some right now, Daylight Lodge, and I believe Luz Veninda Lodge, sister lodge with Hermanos del Arte Lodge up in Brewster. But I wanted to see more of that interaction coming back and forth, because sometimes I didn't see that we all communicated well with brothers. Sometimes because of the way our state was geographically set up, it made it very difficult. And I figured that by having this communication back and forth, we could actually break down some of those barriers that, or sometimes I felt there. Because sometimes I thought we all took the same obligations at the altar, but they didn't seem to pan out, and sometimes I didn't think we could quite play together in the sandbox. So those were some frustrations there.
Okay. What were the challenges of your term?
What I just kind of led into is some of the challenges of the term. One of the sad things that we had is, being a Grand Master, you can't be everybody's friend as much as you would like to be. It doesn't always happen that way, because in essence you're now the president of a company, and you have to run it as a company in a way the best you can. It doesn't always work. And discipline was one of the things that was not fun to do as a Grand Master. You had to make those calls, those decisions sometimes, and yet you tried to be fair, and you tried to listen to what was going on. In the previous 9 years before I was Grand Master, we had a total of 5 Masonic trials. My year alone, we had 5. And that was a sad thing. And of course, the year before I was Grand Master was when we changed our Masonic law to take trials out of the individual lodges and have them functioned and run by the Grand Lodge itself, and set up our committee. So that was a part of the year of being Grand Master that wasn't pleasant, but yet it was a task that had to be performed and done.
What are your favorite memories as Grand Master?
Oh, geez, I have wonderful memories as Grand Master. It's all about the journey and not the destination. And it was such a wonderful, wonderful journey. One of the things that I had fun with doing was, one fond memory was when we had the Grand Master's DMLA class. And they initiated 23 young men into DMLA. That was a highlight. That was fun. It was a highlight because Most Worshipful Brother Santee was working on me for almost 3 years to go to the Philippines. And I says, when I'm Grand Master, I'll go. When I was Grand Master, I went to the Philippines, and it just happened to be in Manila that year. And Santee was already over there, and there were several other brothers that came over from Washington. And when I got off the airplane at the airport, here was a bunch of Masonic Filipino brothers greeting me, and they had a big banner that had my name on. It says, "Welcome to the Philippines, Most Worshipful Brother Gale Kenney." Kenny was spelled wrong, but apart from that, it was okay. We just had a wonderful time. We were escorted everywhere. We snuck away from Grand Lodge one day, and we went down and took a day trip down to Corregidor. And just the history in Corregidor during the Second World War was just something to walk on those grounds, to feel what had gone on, what transpired during those years was something I'll never forget. But the brothers were so hospitable, they were so friendly and so courteous, and they get into it. They love their masonry in the Philippines, and so that was a highlight. Another highlight that I had was that we had fun during my year. We tried to, because I told everybody about, I drink milk. And I said, when I come around and visit, I would like to have a glass of milk. And the brothers stepped up to it and always did that. And one highlight that was really fun with the milk that I didn't know at the time was I went to District 25 and 6. I combined some of my districts together. Most of them I went individually, but about half I did 2 districts at a time that got along. And this was in Oakdale. And John Jamison was the district deputy. And I was sitting at one of the tables because I didn't like head tables. If I could get away with it, I wanted to sit with my brethren. And that's what I did. And I was sitting with my brethren at one of the tables, and John comes up to me and says, "Grand Master, are you ready for your milk?" And I go, "Sure, bring it on." And so he goes into the back room, and he comes out with his wife. And his wife is dressed in a complete cow outfit, black and white spots, horns all over, and the utter from head to toe, carrying in front of her a big silver bowl, and in it was a glass of milk. And they ceremoniously brought it up to me. And that was kind of, it was a fun event that we had at that time, and I really, really got a kick out of it, that we had so much fun with doing that. And so we did like to have fun. And when you talk about having fun, it started really about Grandmaster Wayne Smith here, that we started giving everybody nicknames and handles. Because there's a time for seriousness, there's a time for decorum, but then there's also that time to have fun and levity. And really you have to blame David Owen, our Grand Secretary, who was kind of behind a lot of that. So he decided he'd start coming up with names for us. So after we got in as Junior Grand Warden, we got a name. And so Wayne Smith was called Snuffy. We called him Snuffy Smith, and he loved it, just like the cartoon character of being out in the old South and stuff like that. You could just see him sitting on the porch with his dog and shotgun or something, and Wayne just had so much fun with that. He actually was trying to find a Snuffy Smith hat. It's kind of chewed up and everything. Well, after that, then after him came Doug. Doug's middle initial started with an E, so all of a sudden he became Elvis. And that was fun because Doug was really a rock and roller. He sang in a band and everything, so it was perfect for him. And of course his wife Glennis just idolized Elvis Presley. So after Elvis, then came me, and my middle initial was H. And my name was Hamilton. Well, all of a sudden I got the nickname being called Hambone. And so we had a lot of fun with that. And after me, then of course came Santy, and of course he was G. Santy Lascano, so we thought, wow, he should be G-Man. So he became G-Man, and after Santy came Mike, and his middle initial was L, and he kind of leaned a lot. So our Grand Master, we decided to call him Leeward. And there's actually a lodge in Hawaii that's called Leeward Lodge, and he has a baseball cap from there, so he had fun with that. After him, of course, came our Deputy Grand Master, soon-to-be Grand Master, and we called him Wasabi. His middle initial is W. Now, if you saw almost Most Worshipful Brother Dean, the night after he was installed Junior Grand Steward, it fit him. He came in with my lady's pin on his ear here. He had sunglasses on because if you took them off, I'm sure he had road maps all over those eyes. But we felt that Wasabi fit for him. And we were down in San Francisco, and we actually found a store that said Wasabi and Ginger on it. And the next thing we know, that his wife, she started calling herself Ginger. And that was just the funnest thing. So you have fun with that. And then unfortunately, after him was Jerry Lingle. And Jerry, of course, as we all know, passed away right after he was installed into office. He was the neatest guy you would ever want to know. And he looked like Mr. Clean from the clean spick and span bottles and things like that. But we looked at Jerry, and here's this guy with arms like tree trunks. And we thought Cuddles would be a great name for him. And man, he just took that one to heart. It was the greatest thing. And so we fondly called him Cuddles. And after that, to end up the line, we had Bruce Vesper, who was installed last year. And we call him E-Bunny. And E is his middle initial. So we play with the middle initial there a lot. And of course, him being down the Tri-Cities and very nuclear and everything, electrical and electronic and stuff. So he's E-Bunny. He just loves using that too. And of course, for a time, it was actually David P. Owen, and Peter was his middle name, but we decided that Pythagoras would be a better name for us. So we all had our handles. It was kind of an inside joke, but you see, that just shows that the Grand Masters could have fun as well. And we've had fun with that, and I hope we keep that tradition up, that to show that we're just human at the same time. Along those lines also, I think one of the most funs I had during my year was I did what was called Grandmaster Drop-Ins, GDIs for short. And I had more fun with that. Now, we've done that before, and we called it different things, hospitality visit, surprise visit, things like that. But I just wanted to drop in on my lodge, and I never told anybody I was going to be there. I didn't tell my district deputies, and only maybe 2 other people might know, because I just wanted to be there with my brothers and share with them what it was to be a Mason, to show that I was just as human as they were. And I had so much fun with that. I did 44 of those, along with the other things I did. And that was fun, because we had the best time. I'd walk into a lodge room, and all of a sudden, I tell the titler not to say who it is. It's just a brother properly vouched for. And I walk in the door, and I look up there, and here's a master who was a past master before, and he looks at me, and he goes, I think we should stand. I think we're supposed to stand. Yeah, I know we're supposed to stand. But I mean, they just freak. And I'm sitting next to a brother in another lodge, a person who's just profusely expiring because he's nervous, and go, it's okay, it's okay. And pretty soon after a while, they found out I'm human, just like everybody else. And I'd always want to talk to him on the level, so I'd go down and I'd walk around the room and have fun with the brothers. And I'd say, you know, my brothers, I put my pants on the exact same way you do. I levitate into them, don't you? And it either went right over the head, or they just started breaking out laughing. I said, I'm only kidding. I heard this from a grandmaster in the past. But the truth is, I says, the most important title that you will ever have is brother. Yes, it's nice icing on the cake that you might aspire to be the master of your lodge, or you might become a district deputy, or aspire to be in the Grand Lodge, or even be Grand Master someday. But the most important title you'll ever have is brother, and you will never ever go wrong by calling somebody a brother. And I truly believe that. And so I had fun that year. But another little thing that I want to share, and Santi, if you can zero in on this, it's the pin that you designed for us, and I'll explain the story of that. This, during my year as Grand Master, when I was down in Nevada, I realized and stumbled on, I was Senior Grand Warden at the time, that there were 4 other brothers going up through the Grand Line in their respective jurisdictions that were members of the Grand Lodge of Washington. And we would all be Grand Masters together in 2009, 2010.
Interesting.
And so we decided to design a pin. And so we wanted to have a pentagon because it had our 5 arms interlapping with each other, with the state written on that. And then in the center of that is the past Grand Master's emblem, which I'm wearing, which is the yod. And it's got what we call the Safeway sign in the center. That was the easiest way to say it. And then underneath to where about Vancouver would be, it has the year 2009, 2010, and in the peninsula it has its grand compasses. And Santi designed this for us. We told him what we wanted, and then he designed it. What was interesting about it is that the Grand Master of Alaska, John Bo Klein, belongs to Thornton F. McElroy Lodge number 302. The Grand Master of California, Ken Nagel, belongs to Whidbey Island Lodge number 15. The Grand Master of Nevada, Bud Banks, belongs to Southgate Lodge number 100. And the Grand Master of Oregon, Art Bush, belongs to Mount Moriah Lodge number 11. And then, of course, myself. So that was the 5 of us. And I don't think it's ever happened before where 5 seated Grand Masters of their respective jurisdictions are also members of one Grand Lodge. Now, we've had maybe 1 or 2 because British Columbia is so close, or Oregon's so close, or maybe Idaho or one of those, but not 5 at a time. So we had a lot of fun with that year. And so that was a highlight that I won't forget. So there's many more stories, but I'm sure you don't want to sit here and listen to me just babble about those.
Yeah, I enjoyed that story. I was wondering where that pin came from and what the history it was. But it was interesting.
Yeah.
Does the man make the office, or the office make the man?
Both. Hopefully we have the tools when we come into the office, but that doesn't always happen. Because no matter what we have in mind, what we want to do, the office sometimes does not allow you to do that. Because there's other things that happen. It's not a small jurisdiction. It's not a large jurisdiction. At that time we had about 18,000 Masons in the state. I would have loved to have seen it when we were in our heyday of 60, 65,000. It's just something I just admire to see. But it's both. Sometimes the office makes the man, and sometimes the man makes the office. But it's a combination of the both working homogeneously together to make a unity that you are out there. And hopefully it'll be time that'll decide on whether the office made the man or the man made the office. It's too early to tell right now. And sometimes when you're Grand Master, you can't really make a lot of changes because change, as I said, comes so very slowly. Sometimes all you can do is just be the skipper of that ship, the captain, and try to steer it in a course that keeps it going along a smooth way, and try to deal with the rocks that kind of get thrown in the path sometimes. So it's a combination of both.
What is it like being Grand Master?
It's the most euphoric experience that you will ever have. When I first became a Mason in 1981, and I'm sitting in my lodge, and we had a traditional lodge. We wore tuxedos. It was a formal lodge. And I was sitting there and I was looking at the master of the lodge. I'm going, wow, I could never do that memory work. I can never be the master of the lodge. I mean, oh my gosh. And I ended up being the master 3 times. 1989, 1994, 1998. Not by choice, but sometimes it happens. And unfortunately, if you have to be the master of a lodge more than once, you're in trouble. Sometimes somebody may just fall out of line, that's one thing, but unfortunately in my line, we were in trouble there, that we just couldn't get men to fill the lines. And so then after I was master of the lodge and I saw a district deputy, I thought, wow, gosh, I think it'd be kind of neat to be a district deputy. And the year that I was master of my lodge, we had 9 lodges in our district, and I was everywhere. I was doing everything. I thought, maybe I might get the opportunity next time. And it didn't happen. 2 years went by, and I thought another 2 years it didn't happen. And after a while, I gave up, because I thought this is just never going to happen, because I had Grand Master Jurgich one time says, I'm watching you and stuff, when he was coming up through the line. Nothing ever happened from that. And so sometimes you say, you know, does the man seek the office, or does the office seek the man? And I believe the true answer is that the office seeks the man doesn't seek the office. Because when you seek something, it doesn't always happen that way. And then maybe you're in it for the wrong reasons if that's the case. And I remember when I was a brand new Mason and the Grand Master came and visited us, I mean, I was just shaking in my boots, so to speak. I mean, oh my God, these are gods, you know. And oh, geez, you know, wow, Grand Master. I thought, that's something that's never happened to me. These people, they did walk on water. And so you thought at that time. And I thought I'd never be a deputy. I didn't become a deputy until 2002, and I was master the first time in 1989. So you see, sometimes it just takes that time, and all of a sudden I got a call out of the blue that Deputy Grand Master Jimmy Reed would like to talk with me. I'm going, oh my gosh. And I met him out at the Masonic Retirement Center. And we had a nice conversation, and I was just beside myself, and all of a sudden he was, next to him was a pillow, and he pulled this piece of paper out of the pedal, and he says, I want you to be my deputy sign. And Jimmy gave me the opportunity, he gave me the chance, and I'll never forget that. And that's how I became a deputy of the Grand Master in District Number 5. And I want to say that was probably one of the best jobs that you'll ever have in Masonry, is being a deputy of the Grand Master. It's such an eye-opening, because so often we just stay within our cloistered little shelf of our own lodge and stuff, and we don't get out and travel. And that forced me out there to travel and get to know my brethren and to find out what Masonry was really all about and what it was like. And so from there I thought, wow, that's neat. And then I started becoming involved with Grand Lodge, and I became right away Sat Tashiro asked me if I would be his chairman of long range planning. And I was, and I thought, wow, you know, and I really got into it and started understanding and realizing how Grand Lodge operates and works. And that's one thing you'll never know, is that when you think you know how Grand Lodge works, you don't know until you actually get in the line and see how it really is. And along those lines, becoming Grand Master. I didn't even think I'd ever become Grand Master. I never even entertained that. I thought, that's something that's just way out there that, wow, would be neat sometime. But, oh no, not doing that. And to believe it or not, the current Grand Master, Michael, is the one who actually got me to run for the Grand Line. We had been invited to become, I was in Spokane at the time, and now it drops me. The society I belonged to, I was invited over there to become a part of that, and we were having a libation before dinner, and Mike approaches me and he says, Gale, why don't you consider running for Grand Master? And I says, Mike, I couldn't be Grand Master. I don't know what that's like. I don't think I have enough to offer and stuff. And we chat for a while. He says, right there, you've just given me a whole bunch of reasons why you should become Grand Master. He says, you're well known in the district, you're liked, people look up to you. And he says, I think you ought to consider it. And I go, yeah, okay, Mike, I'll think about it. And down at dinner, we're sitting together, and he asked me again about it. And I'm going, yeah, okay, I'll think about it, Mike. So I came home that weekend, and on Monday I called the Grand Lodge office, and I talked to Charlene. And what a wonderful woman she is. I miss her dearly. A woman who was office manager for 50 years and knowing what 50 Grand Masters were like. Oh, she was a phenomenal lady. We used to chat on the phone when I was deputy for a long, long time. And we just would solve all the ills of the world and stuff, and we had our decisions about what's going on and things like that. But anyway, I said, Charlene, if someone wanted to put their name in the hat for Junior Grand Warden, what would they have to do? She says, well, you would have to put a bio together, a little Masonic bio, and you would have to send us a picture, and that's what it takes. And I says, well, when do you have to have that in? She says, this Friday. I was that near the end of actually making a decision to do that. And I says, okay. And I says, well, who else is running? And I heard the other 3 people that were running for the office, and I says, well, I think I've got as good a chance as they do. So within that next day or so, I had coughed up a resume, and I asked her to send me what some of the other ones had put in the past and stuff, and I looked at them to get a flavor and a tone. And I put one together and sent it in and put my name in the hat. But it was because of our current Grand Master, Michael Sanders, that I probably wouldn't have done it if he had not encouraged me. And I was lucky, and I won on the second ballot. I almost took it on the first ballot, and that was the year that Al Jorgensen was Grand Master, and it was down in Ocean Shores. And I probably was white as a sheet when I won. But it was a feeling that you just couldn't describe to anybody at that moment in time. And being Grand Master, you can't describe either, because what I would say to anybody and stuff is that I had a philosophy of once a steward, always a steward. And that was something we had to never forget, that when you were Grand Master, you had to remember that you were a steward to the brethren. And it wasn't about you, it was about them. And you tried to do the very best job you could. And there was a quote that Dr. Zimmerman made, who was a great motivational speaker. And he says, great leaders are not self-serving takers. They are servers and givers. And in the process of serving and giving, they bring out the best in themselves and others. And that's what we needed to do as Grand Masters, is to be a server of everybody else, to be that steward, and never forget that. And so to be a Grand Master, to answer your question in a long, long way, it's just a feeling that you can't believe. I had a past Grand Master from, excuse me, from South Dakota. From South Dakota. He's telling me over there, speed it up, Gale. From South Dakota, Dennis Robinson says, Gale, you only get to be Grand Master once. do as much as you can, and enjoy every minute of it. And that's what I think I did. I was all over this jurisdiction. I enjoyed my brothers and getting to know them and having a great time, and still taking care of the administrative things. And I was the first Grand Master in the previous 11 plus years to work full time, while I also was being Grand Master. And my typical day would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, go to work, and at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I was off going to a lodge meeting or somebody driving me across the state to do a Grand Master's drop-in. I would get home from a meeting in the local area about 10, 11 o'clock at night. I'd still have another 2 or 3 hours of emails I had to do of Masonic work, and then about 3 o'clock go to bed and get up at 6 and do the whole thing again. And I guess I just lived on energy, because it was the most fabulous year that I could have for myself now. And so to say what it is to be Grand Master, it's wonderful, but it's a journey that is never complete, because it's the destination that you're going for. It's the destination.
Who was of the greatest help to you as Grand Master?
Undoubtedly, Right Worshipful Brother David Owen, our Grand Secretary. That man is worth his weight in gold. He is so helpful. He has good give and take with you and everything. And David and I, we traveled a lot together, and they're just funny times. Here's a guy that likes things cold, and I'm a guy that likes things warm, so you can imagine the hotel room we would stay in. He'd open the window and I'd turn the heat up. But somehow we got along great together and everything. And David is a man that I just can't believe could multitask the way that he did and keep everything in order and all compartmentalized. And the other person that was a lot of help to me the year that I was Grand Master was Most Worshipful Brother Carl Smith, who was chair of my jurisprudence committee. I bounced a lot of things off of him as well. So those are two very integral people that I think really helped me the year that I was Grand Master, as well as all the past Grand Masters. They were there and available if you wanted to ask them for help and assistance. And so they're just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. I understand. Do you come from a Masonic family?
I do not. And that's the interesting thing about it, is yet I say I don't, but maybe somewhere in the background I was, because when I reflect back when I was in elementary school, my sister was a rainbow girl. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, wow. Later on in life, when I knew more about Masonry than I did at the time, obviously I knew nothing, I said, Chris, how come you were never a Job's daughter? And she says, well, Job's daughters had to have a Masonic relationship, and we didn't have one in the family. And I'm going, oh my gosh, Uncle Bill was a Mason. Because I always remember my uncle, he wore that traditional Masonic ring that was maroon with a square and compass in it. And I always remember him wearing that, but he never once ever spoke about it. And I was so disappointed that I didn't know then what I knew now, that I could have talked to him about it. But that was the time, back in the 50s, you just didn't talk about it. And I found out later in life that my dad was de Molay, but he was never a Mason. And I didn't even know that because I never had the opportunity to go through de Molay when I was a kid growing up. But yet I became a Mason. So that was another sad part of my Masonic history, in a way that yet it was there, but I didn't know it at the time. And so, to answer the question, yes and no. It was kind of both that I kind of stumbled onto later on in life.
What important Masonic changes did you see in your career?
That's a hard question to answer, because there were so many changes that have taken place. And as I say, change sometimes in a grand jurisdiction happens slowly. It comes very slowly with change. Our long-range plan was a tremendous change that started back in the late 1989, 1990 time frame. 2000 time frame is really kind of around there, 2000, where it really started to happen and kick off, I think, around with Dick McCarty and Bill Woods year is the year that it happened. So to see that change, one big change that I really saw was that several years ago, when we allowed standard work, lodge to have the work conducted on any one of the 3 degrees. So if an entered apprentice showed up, then we would open lodge on the entered apprentice degree and conduct our business, or the fellowcraft after that. Excuse me. I've had the luxury of going up through the Grand Line, of going to a lot of different Grand Lodge jurisdictions and visiting with them. And that's the thing that is so great, because you learn so much by traveling within your own jurisdiction and outside of that if you have the opportunity. And in one Grand Lodge that I went to, that was on the resolutions, was to allow work to be conducted on any of the 3 degrees. And at that time, it was the senior Grand Warden who stood up and spoke against it. He says, why would we allow a Mason to come in and have business conducted on the entered apprentice or the fellowcraft? They should be outside with their coach, learning their memory work and things like that. I mean, what would there be for them when they became a Master Mason staff? And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, how backwards are we here in this Grand Lodge? And to know that in our grand jurisdiction, we get somebody involved and have them become integral parts of the lodge. And so that's where this grand jurisdiction of Washington is ahead of a lot of other grand jurisdictions. We're progressive in so many ways, and it's a wonderful thing. So that when that EA shows up, we welcome them with open arms, and we sit down with them, and we have them be a part of that meeting that's going on, that stated communication. And when I would travel to other jurisdictions and I'd get up and have the opportunity to speak in front of them, one thing I would say to them is I'd say that in undergraduate school, we call it plagiarism. In graduate school, we call it research. And my brothers, I want you to research anything you want from this jurisdiction or any other jurisdiction. Don't need to reinvent the wheel, because Masonry is one family. And we're all in this together, and that's how we learn from each other. And that was the beauty of doing that. So there's things, and we sent our long-range plan to other grand jurisdictions who asked to have a copy of it to see what it's like. I just recently sent to the Grand Lodge of Arkansas, as a matter of fact, our past Grand Masters ceremony, because they said they wanted something more solemn and stuff, and I sent it to them, and they use it now in theirs. And when I was down at the Conference of Grand Masters also this last year in Atlanta, I ran into the Deputy Grand Master of Arkansas, who asked if they had what our formal ceremony was like for installation of Grand Officers. So I sent that to him too. And with all these people, I tell them, use what you want. Tailor it, make it your own, make it yours. What you don't want, just throw away. And so these are things that I've seen, that by us being a progressive Grand Lodge, we're able to share Masonry with everybody, and it's a great thing. And it's neat. I mean, there's so many things that we have come along. It's just hard to remember them all at the spur of the moment. But that was a couple things that I like seeing that we've changed.
Is there anything that you want to discuss that we may not have talked about?
Yeah, there was something that as we were talking that I forgot about, that when I was Grand Master, I had the honor of being elected by my peers at the Conference of Grand Masters when I was Deputy Grand Master, so that the year that I was Grand Master, I was elected to be the chairman of the planning committee that put the entire conference on. And that was so much fun to do and get to know my counterparts in other grand jurisdictions. And so what was nice about that also is that was the 100th anniversary of the George Washington Masonic Memorial that year. And one of the things, the highlights that we did is that we reenacted the Life magazine from 1953 or 56 of all the Grand Masters standing on the steps in front of the George Washington Memorial, and we reenacted it that year in February of 2010. And so that was kind of a fun thing to do, and it was an honor to be able to be a part of that and to be the chair of that program. So that was something that was really nice. That was neat to do. And if I was to say something to the brethren right now as well, I would tell them again to never forget that once a steward, always a steward. To remember where you were first prepared to be made a Mason, and that was in your heart. And to remember to govern yourself with your head, but when you work with and deal with other people, to work with your heart. Because if you believe and work with your heart, you will never go wrong. And to remember, again, that it's the journey and not the destination. Take yourself, because we're all that rough ashlar. We're a tabula rasa, we're a blank slate just waiting to be etched upon. And the journey for everybody to move from that rough ashlar to look for that diamond in the rough, and that journey to become that smooth ashlar someday is the destination that we may never ever reach, because it can be a lifetime, is to do that, to polish our rough edges, to be open-minded about things, to look at other ways of doing things, to not be afraid to step out there and take a chance, not always going for that low fruit hanging on the tree, but to stretch, have stretch goals and things, and to work with our fellow brothers, and to be involved with our youth. They are our future, and so often we forget it. To just have them sit on the sidelines and support our Job Stutters, or our Rainbow, or our DMLA. It is the most wonderful feeling you'll ever have. And as being a past associate grand guardian of Job Stutters, I can attest to that. I could have a terrible day at work, and I would come into a Bethel meeting, and the little girls would just run up to you and give you a big hug, and it would just melt you. Mm-hmm. And to see that little kid, who now they only have to be 10 years old to come in. Then they had to be 12, and it moved down to 11. And they would be there, and they couldn't even take their eyes off their feet. They were so shy. And within a couple of years or so, as they progressed through the line, or they learned their stuff, they became the honored queen of that Bethel, and they were dynamic speakers. They were leaders. They could do memory work. They did floor work. They had levity, and they had decorum. And this is what we help teach these young kids, these young children, these young adults as they grow up, because they become our future leaders, not only in the Masonic family, but in life, in the community. And so they are our future, and we can't ever forget them. We have to support them. And I don't mean support them just monetarily. I mean, get involved, be a part of their groups, and help them grow and be all they possibly can be. So that's something I tell the brethren to do, is learn to love one another in brotherly love and friendship and fellowship, and enjoy that.
Most Worshipful, what message would you like to send to today's Masons?
I just sent it. Be all you can. Get involved. I think that was it.
Okay.
Be supportive of everybody.
Excellent interview. Most Worshipful, in the name of the Grand Lodge and those who are involved with this project, I wish to thank you for your participation in this oral history. Thanks very much, Most Worshipful.
Thank you very much as well. And can I say one last thing?
I just
thought of it the last minute.
You bet you can.
I had a lot of fun during my year with my theme, not only Inform, Inspire, Involve, but also my music, because I'm a big fan of Phantom of the Opera. And very worship brother David Gillian was my grand musician. Every time I came into the room, he would play Phantom of the Opera music for me. And it just created such a wonderful atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So that was something that I wanted to throw in there at the very last minute.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.